only about 20% of our youth that are age eligible to serve, so about 18 to the mid-20s, only 20% are actually eligible to serve.
Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
Activate the best, most energized, productive, and connected version of yourself with Heroic, the official wellness app of Spartan. Learn more and get started with your free Spartan starter pack at heroic.us/Spartan. That's heroic.us/Spartan.
Joe Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and the Spartan Up podcast. I have got a super coach from Norwich University, the oldest private military university in the United States. This place is awesome. It's up the street from our farm in Vermont. Coach Rachele Pojednic. Did I get that name correct?
You got it.
She is incredible. She's helping the military become more prepared, the future military become more prepared. And we're just talking about how we can all become fitter, healthier, not only live longer, but have a good health span. Is that a fair way to describe what you're working on?
That is the new buzzword, health span. Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I started talking to somebody about, because I watched my dad, the last 20 years of his life, he lived in and out of hospitals, and it didn't have to be that way. It was just poor lifestyle choices. And we talked about health span versus lifespan. And I'm happy to see that it has become a buzzword, because it just didn't make sense to me why people would throw away the last 20 years of their life.
Yeah, that's the hardest part. I think all the biohackers are like, how can we squeeze 1 or 2 more years out? But I don't think that's the right play. I think it's, how do we make the last 20 years as good as the first 60, you know?
Tell me, I'm so glad you just used the word biohackers, because at night, my brain is spinning before I go to bed. I think of so many cool things. And last night, which I completely forgot about to use the word biohacking, I thought, and by the way, I'm friends with Tim Ferriss, I'm friends with Kelly Starrett, I'm friends with all Ben Greenfield, you name it, right? So I get it. And my mom was like a 1970s biohacker, so I get it. But if you and I were living like in a zoo, because we're animals. At the end of the day, you and I are animals, right? And we were living in a zoo, kind of like the way most of us live now. We live in a zoo, right? We're fed on demand. We don't move around very much. And all of a sudden, the zookeeper came along and said, hey, Rachel and Joe, I spent some time with Ben Greenfield and Tim Ferriss last night. We're going to start putting you in a cold plunge. We're going to have red light therapy for you. You're going to start eating once a day instead of 3 times a day. Or, Rachel and Joe, you guys can leave the zoo and go live in the wild 9 or 10 hours a day and run around and climb and crawl and get dirty. Like, doesn't that make more sense? What are we doing?
It's so funny. I feel like maybe we were on the same wavelength overnight. And then this morning, I've been thinking about this a ton, is, we all, and full disclosure, I am a professor at Norwich University. I'm a biochemist. I love this stuff. I'm a researcher and the director of research at this organization called Restore Hyper Wellness, where we've got the cryotherapy and we've got the red light therapy. And so I'm a believer in all of this. However, you're only going to be able to squeeze out a little bit more from all of those therapies, right? If you don't have the basics, right? If you're not eating well, moving your body, getting sleep, figuring out a way to reduce your stress, like getting out of the zoo, as you put it, I call it the outrage circle. Like, if you're not able to do that first, I don't care how often you're cold plunging or shooting peptides up your veins, like, you're not there. Like, it's not going to do the trick. So yeah, that's something that I think about a ton with the military. And in a previous life I was working, or I guess in a simultaneous life, I work with medical professionals, so doctors and nurses, and teaching them about the importance of lifestyle, of performance medicine. How do we, maximize our day to day? And at the end of the day, it's eat your fruits and vegetables, get some high quality protein, move your body, sleep, de-stress. That's the big thing. And if that means getting outside of the zoo and being in nature, yes, 100%.
Yeah, because I think, and again, I want you to push back on the way my brain thinks is we are all inherently lazy, right? Our brain, in an effort to protect itself and us, it says all those hard things are threats. Don't do the hard work, don't sweat, don't expend too much energy. And so we find ourselves moving less and less and less every day, right? Eating the cookies, not eating the salad, right? Because the salad's hard, the cookie's easy. And if we could somehow just flip it on its head and say, like, stop buying stuff. Stop like listening to podcasts and reading, like just go, like this morning, I don't feel like doing it any morning, but this morning I was like, it's really windy out. It's really cold. I'm going to go for a run. I don't want to go, but I know I'm supposed to go. And then 3/4 of the way through it, I just happened to be near the ocean today. And I said, I'm going in the ocean, and it's cold and there's nobody on the beach. And, I might get sucked out in a riptide. It looks pretty rough, but I'm going in the ocean. And my whole day is better.
Yep.
My whole day is better. And it wouldn't have been as good if I kind of faked it with some red light therapy. And so, you know what I mean? It just wouldn't have been the same as like going outside in the elements.
Yeah, it's such a good point. When we think about the simple things, the eat well, the exercise, all of those things, particularly when you look at exercise, which is really my wheelhouse, right? So I'm a program director of exercise science. I've been studying exercise for over 20 years. One of the things that's really amazing about exercise, and the reason why it works, is it stresses your body out, right? And that's what all of these things do, is we essentially need to stretch, not physically stretch, although you could also do that. We need to stretch our cells to do new things. We need to challenge them. And then we need to give them the right fuels to then come back and recover, right? And so that's what creates resiliency. That's what creates longevity. That's what creates, back to this word of health span, is that if we are stressing our bodies out with things like exercise, jumping in and giving ourselves a mental and physical stress of being in the ocean where you're cold, you're having this, sympathetic nervous reaction, you are excited, you are, feeling life, and then coming back and taking a big deep breath and letting your body recover from that, those cycles are what cause these long-term beneficial effects.
Maybe you and I will just wrap it all up with one sentence from now on that says, break out of the zoo.
Break out of the zoo. Break out of the zoo. I'm stealing it. I'm using it. I'll quote you.
We just got to break out of the zoo every day.
Yeah.
And
totally agree.
And our zoo is our, in this new world with Zoom that you and I are on right now, it's our homes. We don't even go to the office anymore. Yeah. So, all right. The bigger problem now we have is all these young kids, mine included, in all your research, it's showing that even if they wanted to go to military, they couldn't.
Yeah.
And most of them don't want to go. They're not prepared.
Yeah, so the new statistics that are coming out is that only about 20% of our youth that are age eligible to serve, so about 18 to the mid-20s, only 20% are actually eligible to serve. And so the three main reasons why they're not eligible are obesity and lack of physical readiness. They have had some kind of run-in with the law, or they have mental health disorders. And so those are the three things that are playing into this. However, of that 20%, it's estimated that only about 3% are both eligible and interested in serving in the military. And so, after we have gotten through these last 20 or 30 years of demonstrating the challenge, the global challenges, and the ongoing need for military presence around the world, whether in peacetime or in wartime, that's a real issue for our Department of Defense and for our national security overall. And we don't think about things like PE class or, going to your pediatrician and having that person know how potent and powerful recess is, or, serving the right foods in the cafeteria at school, learning those skills young, being able to sustain those skills once you get to university level or, service age. If we don't start that young to the point of, your kids, we're not going to get there. This isn't something that we can fix from the back end. We have to fix it at the root cause of this problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you and I were running a school and all of a sudden budgets get tight, first thing we cut is PE. We don't need PE.
Yep.
We need more math. But all the science, all the studies show actually more PE produces better math results. Is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy at all. And it has a very direct correlation to neuroplasticity and what's going on with your brain when you exercise. I did a study probably about 10 years or so now investigating a really awesome program called Box. Reebok sponsored it. And it's a program where basically kids come to school early and they run around and they play. And when we did this study, we did it in Boston with MGH and a couple of researchers over there. What we found was not surprising. The kids that came and played early in the morning did better in school. They were more attentive. They had better metrics all the way through, whether it was first grade, fifth grade, or seventh grade. And that data is not unique to the work that I did. That's sort of been shown over and over again. In fact, they show if you play, particularly in elementary school, in a math classroom, you throw a ball around, you balance on one foot, you're actually better at doing math because you're sort of creating these synapses that are going to help you. So it devastates me when we have these budget cuts and the first thing to go is PE. And it's funny, you and I are not that far apart in age, but we used to do that all the time. Like I went to school and played for 30 minutes in the playground just because that's what I wanted to do before classroom. Now it's like play dates and safety and making sure that kids aren't alone. And I appreciate that that's scary as a parent, but we have to teach our kids to move and be creative and use their skills to understand how to be with each other, because that's being lost right now in addition to all of the physical activity deficits that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. All right, we talked about the military. We talked about the obvious change in school programs we should enact. What about a little more salad and a little less processed food? How do we make that happen?
It's a great question. I was listening to your podcast, and forgive me, I forget her name, but she was a nutrition expert from Cornell. And you said something to the effect of, we have this food system where the goal is to sell more food, but not to help make people healthy. And it just struck me because, I think you and I are pretty simpatico and like-minded on this, is that's something that I've been saying for years and years and years is, do I love a good piece of cake or a cookie here and there? 100%, right? But not all the time. And that can't be our go-to. And I appreciate processed foods. It's shelf stable. We can feed more people. People need calories, but people also need the right calories to stay healthy. And again, back to this idea of health span, if we're making kids, adolescents sick with type 2 diabetes, we have a military problem, we have a health span problem, we have a health care problem. It's all tightly related. And it blows my mind that only now are healthcare, the military catching on to this, that this was something that they needed to be so much more proactive about 30, 40, 50 years ago. And we're playing catch up at this point.
I've been in business since I'm pre-teens, and I'm definitely a capitalist, and I love business and I love our country, but there needs to be certain guardrails when we're all driven by selling each other stuff.
Yeah.
There's guardrails around alcohol. There's guardrails around drugs. The cocaines, the heroines, you name it, right? There's guardrails around, and I guess there's guardrails around those things, because they have such an immediate impact on an individual. Processed foods have a long, drawn out negative impact on individuals, right? But same negative impact.
Yep.
So you and I, you're president, I'm vice president. Next election, you get voted in. People heard you on this podcast. They vote for you. You're not even running. You just get voted in because that's how good the podcast was. What do? We're not going to be able to pass a ton of things. We're going to pass a few. Like, what do we do to just change the country overnight, to get our youth prepared, to make them healthier, to get folks to understand how simple, like, what do we do?
Yeah, it's so hard. It's an excellent question. I think super important. I would like to also say that I come from a family of small business owners, and I appreciate the hard work and making a business, making a product that sells well, and feeling really proud of that. And I almost feel like that is the angle that we take on this, is that, you know, maybe it's not, we've tried making all these rules, right? We've tried making, you know, laws, and we've tried policy, and there's always wiggle room around it, right? And most of the time you can come back to the money, and you can come back to special interests, you know, trying to get there. If you look at the food system, and you look at the Farm Bill, and you look at the FDA, you know, like, there's a lot of special interests there that are getting their cut. And I'm wondering if maybe that's the way that we fix this, is that I think maybe that's why your statement struck me so much, is that why isn't there an industry trying to make people healthier? And again, as much as I love the biohacker crowd, and, you know, that they really genuinely are trying to do that, and I am a longtime advocate of and member of the fitness and wellness industry. I've been, you know, a personal trainer since I was 18 years old, hustling to help people get healthy. But that market just doesn't really exist. And I think it was the same podcast you were talking about your mom, and going into the health food store in the mid 70s, and how it was like the hippie hangout, and how it's always sort of been a bit of a counterculture. And like, how do we make that mainstream culture without it being diet culture, without it being, I'm selling you this weight loss cookie or this like lollipop that's going to make you or just give you 6-pack abs? Like, I'm talking about health span here. And one of the things that I find really difficult is, so I teach college students, right? They're 18, 19 years old. And I'm like, oh, you got to eat your fruits and vegetables so that you don't get hypertension, and you don't get cardiovascular disease. Because at the end of the day, that's the stuff that's going to get us, right? Like, those are the main killers in the United States. But what they want to talk about is like, how do I lift heavier? How do I look better? And I just feel like this is a marketing problem. Like, we have created a cesspool of marketing to older folks, like, you don't want to die. You don't want to die of cancer and cardiovascular disease, you know, eat your fruits and vegetables, whatever. And then we've got this culture with kids where we're like, oh, you want to look better. You want to be like, there's something missing in the middle there, is that like, how do we feel better? How do we live our life? How do you thrive in such a way that you go for a run and you're like, I'm going to go jump in the ocean, man, because that feels amazing, right?
Well,
that's missing. And I don't know if the president is necessarily the right person to do that. I almost feel like this needs to come from the market. Although it certainly has to be both, but, you know.
Spartans, do you want to go through life in the same unstoppable way that you do at a Spartan race? With the courage, commitment, and confidence to go over, around, and through obstacles? Well, that's exactly what Heroic, the official wellness app of Spartan, is all about. Heroic integrates ancient wisdom, modern science, and practical tools to help you activate the best, most heroic version of yourself. Get started for free with more wisdom in less time with a Spartan starter pack distilling the big ideas from a few of Joe DeSena's great books, Spartan Up and the Spartan Way, into 6-page PDFs. Then, put that theory into practice with world-class habit tracking and behavior design tools that research shows can help you be 40% more energized, 20% more productive, and 15% more connected in just minutes a day. Learn more and get your free starter pack at heroic.us/Spartan, where, as a Spartan, you'll also be able to save 20% off all premium memberships. It's time to activate your best and flourish, being more energized, productive, and connected. Not someday, but today.
concerns I have, again, I've been around it, like you pointed out. My mom from the 70s, I've been around this, right? And I look at my two boys. We have 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. Our 2 boys are in a very, very high level wrestling program. They train twice a day, at least 4 hours a day. And the culture in that room is all about eating healthy, taking care of yourself. I mean, you're 4 hours a day they're training, right? Very high level. The better you do, the better you train. The consequences are pretty significant, win or lose, embarrassed or not, as a kid, right? And even my kids who live in the house with me, who live in that culture, in that crazy wrestling room, are any chance they get going for cake and cookies. And so, number one, it's got to be not cool, like cigarettes became not cool. Huh. Like not wearing a ski helmet became not cool, right? So it's got to be not cool. But 2 is, you're going to hate to hear this, and everybody, I just got like a pocket constitution yesterday, so I believe in freedom also, like, so don't misinterpret me. I literally got this little pamphlet. I want to make the kids memorize the Constitution. So don't misinterpret this, but like, I feel like there's got to be rules, because if my kids who live in my house with me, I'm a maniac, I'm screaming this every day. I'm asking my wife not to buy any processed foods at all, because even I'll be weak. If it's there, I'm going to eat it, right? Just don't have it in the house, but it makes its way into the house because the kids, tie my wife up and probably
Girl Scout cookie season, man. Like, there's nothing you can do.
Right. And so there's just got to be rules. And so anybody listening is like, freedom, we need freedom, this is America. And it's like, sorry, we can't handle the freedom.
Yeah.
You don't believe me? Go to a Walmart, go to a 7-Eleven, look at everybody walking out the door with Slurpees. We can't handle it. And so we are allowing us to sell each other stuff that's bad for us. And we just don't have the discipline at scale. Some of us do, but at scale, we don't have the discipline. By the way, it's not even a fair fight. My friend took over the food. Sorry, I'm interviewing you, but I can't help myself.
It's all good. Please. This is right in my wheelhouse. Go for it.
My friend took over the food budget for New York City schools, $1.2 billion annual budget. Greatest intentions. It's as if you were running the program, and he was going to change everything. And you know what he got changed over 5 years? Nothing. He said, I couldn't fight the potato lobby. I couldn't fight Coca-Cola. I tried to get sodas removed, but they give the schools $55 million a year. There was no way to get it out. He said, and then when I finally was allowed to put wheat bread instead of white bread on a hamburger, the kids wouldn't eat it. So like, you're not going to be able to pull this off. I'm not Debbie Downer. Put a tax on this stuff. If you really want the freedom of being able to plump yourself up as much as possible, and then be upset that you're plump, and then buy something to try to get rid of the plumpness, like, you know what I mean? If you really want, not you, like if we really want that, we're going to have, you're just going to have to put a tax on things.
Yeah, they've tried this. So to your point, with school lunches, there was this act that was the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. It was passed originally, I want to say in like 2012. It's been through many different iterations. They got really strict, and it was doing some pretty good things. We saw that, early on, kids were not like, I'm not eating. I want chocolate milk. I don't want the regular milk. I want my white bread. I don't want wheat bread. And over time, it did start to work, and we saw changes in the school lunches, as well as changes in, whether or not the kids liked it and ate it. And then we actually even saw some changes in overweight and obesity rates in kids. And this is where I get like a little bit, it's hard because politics are politics, right? And so it was a really strict rule with one administration, and then another administration comes in and they basically just gutted the whole thing, right? So we're back to where we started. And so this is where I'm thinking like, yes, the rules by this certainly work. And there's others, cities and states have tried putting taxes on sugar sweetened beverages. There are some countries that have done it, just some pretty good success. The problem is that doesn't change culture, right? So it doesn't change the fact that people are still going to want all of those things. So I think to your point, yeah, we should put some rules into place. And then also we have to figure out how to bring up this and elevate this conversation of how do you make food choices? How do you make food choices in your environment? What can you afford? How can we make this food, this healthy food, affordable and accessible? It's kind of a rat's nest, but I think it can be fixed. It just needs to come from all angles.
So
I saw you I saw you raise your hand, so it's like we're in the classroom. Go for it, Joe.
I raised my hand.
What are your thoughts?
I immediately thought of cigarette smoking. As I mentioned before, I thought of ski helmet skiing, and I thought of seat belts in cars. It was completely uncool to put a seatbelt on. It was completely uncool to wear a helmet, and it was completely uncool to not smoke.
Yep.
But we pulled those off culturally in our society, and it was probably a three-pronged approach. There were rules in place. Yep. You got penalized. There was lots of education about it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, somehow we saw some superstars or some actors and actresses wearing their seatbelt in a Prius or whatever, right? Like, so we made it cool. We put rules in place, and we did a lot of education. And you have to do that with processed foods and movement. It's harder in those areas because somebody like Warren Buffett, who, he's not necessarily a movie star, but he is a pretty big deal. I just saw the other day posted something about how he'd rather live 1 year less, but eat and drink any kind of food he wants. And, that's a little bit of him marketing Coca-Cola, his largest equity position, right? But and Dairy Queen and so if you still have that going on, if it's cool, if the Kardashians are caught on camera eating ice cream, whatever it may be, right? Like, then it's hard to combat that.
Totally. And I think that's one thing that's really hard is that, you always hear the story of like, oh, I had this uncle that smoked 6 packs a day until the day he died. Or like, you got a guy like Warren Buffett that says, oh, I eat a cheeseburger and, Coca-Cola every day for lunch. Somehow they have bucked the trend and they're still healthy, but that is not the case for the majority of Americans. And if you were to ask an average adult that has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, that's on 6 medications, that has a hard time getting around, whether or not they want 1 more year of living a life like that, or they would go back and they want 10 years back living the life that they had when they were 30 and 40 years old, I think that you would hear a really different story. And so I think, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, a healthy person wants one thing. I'm sorry, a sick person wants one thing. A healthy person wants everything. I have a good friend, a very good friend, who was fighting with me for the last 3 years with my kids. We got to take them to go get barbecue. We got to take them to get ice cream. They work so hard. You can't be so ridiculous around salad and healthy foods. Called them up. How you doing? Bad news. What? I got cancer. You got cancer. Now, do you think it has anything to do with the way you've been eating? No. They said it was something else, some kind of radiation or something. Okay, well, you don't live near Chernobyl. So, and maybe it wasn't the food. But the point is, God forbid, if anybody listening or watching this podcast, if this happens to you, do you question, think about it, play that forward. Do you say, I wish I ate more ice cream and chicken wings? Or do you say, I really don't like the fact that I got cancer, God forbid. I wish I would have lived a little healthier.
Yeah, and I think
that's what you say.
Yeah, and it's so hard, especially cancer is like a loaded gun, right? Like there's a million different reasons why people get cancer, and we're working really hard to figure out why that happens. And we do know that there's certainly a relationship with behaviors and with food, and there's a huge genetic component. There's also just like dumb luck with cancer, right? But there are other diseases that are tightly wound to nutrition, and metabolic health is so intricately wound with food and with exercise. And it's funny, my world lives in a Venn diagram of exercise and nutrition, right? And I always say that if I had to choose one or the other, like Rachel, you can eat healthy for the rest of your life. You can never exercise. You can eat whatever you want and you can exercise. I would choose the latter because I think exercise is so important for cell turnover, for metabolic health, for brain health, all of these things. Again, it goes back to this challenging of the system. Not to say that fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy amount of protein, you know, the critically important, 100%. But there's something about exercise and that stress on the system. This goes back to the idea of getting out of the zoo, right? Like challenging yourself. And we also know that it's really important for things like cancer prevention, right? And this is not to be victim blaming. Again, cancer is like, sometimes it's just dumb, terrible, awful luck. It has struck my family, unfortunately, really, really healthy people. It just happens, right? But if we can think about these behaviors and the synergy that they have to help to prevent these diseases, like we got to figure out the culture to get people more proactive about this. You said seatbelts and smoking and wearing helmets. The one that I see happening more and more, which I think is really interesting, particularly with young people, is alcohol consumption. It seems the data is showing that young people drink a lot less than, I mean, I don't want to throw myself under the bus, but I did my fair share of, you know, consumption when I was in college. And that seems to be changing, which is like, if that needle can be moved, because what's different about that from the other ones is, you know, it's sort of like an easy one to regulate, right? Alcohol's been regulated for years. And for some reason, there's a culture shift happening there. If we can understand that a little bit more, I think that we could probably apply it to these other behaviors.
You know, some of that might be, I'm completely speculating here. I have no data. And then we're going to get into the course that we created with Norwich University. But there's definitely a huge shift going on due to this drug. I'm holding on my phone, which helps you release a ton of dopamine every few seconds, depending on how much you look at it. When I was younger, I definitely had to chase those dopamine triggers.
Yep.
I had to maybe go have a beer with guys, maybe talk to a girl, whatever those things. Now you just check Instagram, right? You just check your text or whatever. So I wonder if there's some connection there. But who knows? Whatever it is, it's good. It's good that it's happening.
Yeah, I'm sure. I was the same. I didn't have a cell phone until I was out of college. Like it was not part of my youth at all.
No.
And same thing. You had to go out and find the dopamine hits.
And leave the zoo.
Yeah, leave the zoo. Indeed, leave the zoo.
Now you don't have to leave the zoo. You stay in your cage and you get all the dopamine you want.
So true.
So one thing before we get into MarTech, I cracked the code. We cracked the code on what it would take to have healthy lifestyle guaranteed without rules and regulations, without culture shift, without anything. I know you're leaning in now. What is it? It's so simple. It's a date on the calendar. If you have a date on the calendar, if you're a boxer and you've let yourself go and you're a little bit out of shape, as soon as you have that fight set at a date, you start training seriously, you start eating healthy, your whole life changes. If you're a bride or a groom, as soon as you set that wedding date, I know because we have a wedding business up in Vermont, all of a sudden the bride and groom are training and eating healthy and they want to look as good as possible on that date. If you are a student in college and you're drinking and not paying attention to the professor, as soon as there's a date where you're going to have to take that test, that exam, you start studying. So for us, when people sign up for races, their whole life changes, which is why it's a fight to get them to sign up, because they know once they sign up, they got to do the work and nobody wants to do the work.
I call that the big why. So in behavior change theory, it's like, what is the reason that you want to do that? And I would even take it a step further and say it might not even be the date on the calendar, but the date on the calendar gives them the step to get to the big why, right? So like maybe for them, the person that's signing up for the death race, which we'll talk about in just a second, is like, I want to become a healthier, stronger, more present human And doing the death race is going to get me there because I have to your point, do the work. So yeah, the big why. 100%.
I like that. We should put on our homepage a scroll down of whys to choose. It would always be what you just said. Everybody wants to be more resilient, stronger, healthier, but they might not want to do the work. All right. So death race been happening every year for this will be the 18th year. We had a little moment of a sabbatical in there, but otherwise happened every year. And it rips people completely out of their comfort zone. It's really a life race, even though we call it death race, because everything that can go wrong does go wrong. We lie to participants. They don't know when it's going to start, when it's going to end. It's really a game of attrition. There's only a few men and women standing at the end. All sizes and shapes. So up the big muscular folks, the skinny folks, the business people, the mom. I mean, you name it, they come. The least obvious people complete it. We had a young girl win it 2 or 3 years back. Athena was her name. And when we interviewed her at the end, we were shocked. Maybe she was 20 years old. And she said, look, I was literally on the couch. I was smoking cigarettes. I was completely unhealthy. Somebody told me about this Spartan thing. And I just went and did one. And then I did the next level and the next level. And the final one was death race. And here I am. She won it. So
Amazing.
That's always fun. So for the first time ever, we're going to tie in a course with Norwich University. We've never had a course with any university, any school, that's tied into the death race. And the goal is to put people in a classroom setting and show them the science, show them the theory, show them the textbook to resiliency, to persistence, to getting stuff done. And I'm so excited that Norwich was willing to do this, because most times lawyers, the suits, they're not going to team up with Crazy Joe and Spartan and Death Race. So super pumped that Norwich was willing to do this.
Yeah, so this is an awesome initiative. So MRTAC is the name of the course. So MRTAC, Military Resilience and Tactical Athlete Course. And this is based upon a certificate program that we're actually developing, much because you reached out to us and we're like, hey, this is really something that we're interested in doing. And myself and the Health and Human Performance team at Norwich, as well as Coach Scott Caulfield and the Commandant and the ROTC colonels, came together and we were like, hey, this is a problem that we can solve in our little test kitchen here. We are producing military officers and we want them to be ready to handle this resilience and this performance from a scientific perspective. So this course is 2 days. You're going to live on the campus and we're going to treat you like one of our cadets. So you're going to be, out in the wilderness, out in the outside, in the classroom, listening from our experts that are trained to help special operators and tactical athletes perform at the highest levels. You're doing things like, after we just talked about all the processed foods, you're going to be eating the MREs that our soldiers eat. And so really getting to the nitty gritty and exactly what you're talking about, the science of performance and resilience at the highest level.
I love it. I can't wait to bring my kids there. I'm bringing all kinds of folks there. This is happening end of June. If you're listening, if you're feeling like you want to pivot in your life, you want to get out of the zoo and go straight to becoming a special operator, this is your chance.
Absolutely. We're going to have some incredible faculty, prior tactical athletes, warfighters, experts in their field. So this is the place to be. And Norwich is really throwing a stake in the ground here to say, this is what we're doing. We are going to change the game.
Or you could just stay home and watch Netflix and eat popcorn.
I wouldn't recommend it. Although sometimes on a Friday night, if it's raining and you've got nothing else to do.
For 11 minutes, that's it.
All right.
You're awesome. How do we find you, by the way?
Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place. I love science communication. It's one of my favorite things. So I'm on all the socials at Rachele Pojednic. Good luck on the spelling. You guys will probably link to it, but you can find me there, or you can search for me on the Norwich website. But yeah, come and check it out. I do a lot of science communication just in all of these areas. So let's change the game. Let's change the culture here. This is so important.
You're awesome. I'm going to share this video all throughout the Spartan community all over the world and tell them to come to Norwich so we can show them what living's all about.
I love it.
Zoo.
Thank you so much. And I'm super jazzed about this partnership between Norwich and Spartan. It's perfect. It's just exactly what the world needs right now.
Activate the best, most energized, productive, and connected version of yourself with Heroic, the official wellness app of Spartan. Learn more and get started with your free Spartan starter pack at heroic.us/Spartan. That's heroic.us/Spartan.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Spartan Up Podcast.